everyone. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Female Empowered Podcast. I am back with a guest episode. You all know I love guest episodes. And this whole month, we are featuring business owners, other female business owners in a variety of niches that are going to share their story with you. So today I have Amanda Frank, who's the founder and CEO of Uplift, that's in San Antonio, correct? Texas.
Yes.
I don't know why I always want to say like Houston, but I know it's San Antonio. I don't know why I want to say Houston, but so Amanda's here with us. She has an amazing pelvic health practice that you only started how many years ago?
Just a little over 2 years ago, actually.
I mean, crazy that how well you're doing in just 2 years. I was still um fumbling around in the dark 2 years into my business. So Amanda, why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what your business specializes in.
Yeah, so thanks for the introduction. I really appreciate it. So I'm Amanda. I'm a physical therapist and I own a pelvic health practice in San Antonio. Like Christa said, we've been open for about 2 years. It's been a really fun journey. I started my career in physical therapy actually in the Army as a physical therapist, and then transitioned out around the time I was ready to have children and started Uplift Physical Therapy soon after that.
That's pretty crazy. And why don't you tell everyone what else you accomplished earlier this year?
So I graduated with my PhD, which
Amazing.
was really
I can't
cool.
I can't believe I didn't introduce you as doctor now because you have a DPT and a PhD. You have a lot of letters behind your name, but I apologize for not calling you doctor. What was your PhD in?
It was a PhD in physical therapy, so I was really focused on becoming excellent in teaching, as well as research.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So I always like to ask people how they got into pelvic health. Now, granted, when you graduated from physical therapy school, it was a little bit more talked about. And I don't want to say mainstream because I still don't think now it's even mainstream. But compared to when I came out of PT school, there was like two in the country. So did you know coming out of physical therapy school that that's what you wanted to go into?
Absolutely not. I actually had a friend in PT school because I went to PT school in the Army. So they train us to be like orthopedic experts, like knees,
Mhm.
hips, backs. That's our bread and butter in the military. And my friend was very interested in pelvic, and I thought she was weird, like real weird. Sorry, Maddie. But after that, I had my own kiddo when I got out of the army, and I unfortunately suffered a birth injury. Like I literally was not able to walk more than like 5 minutes or
Oh,
bounce like my son without feeling like everything was going to fall apart or fall out. So when I went and saw like my OB, they just told me like, hey, just like wait it out, like it's not just, it might get better kind of thing. They said it's too soon. I asked my family members, like, is this normal? And they were like, I mean, yeah, you had a baby. This is just what you have to live with. Like, get over it kind of thing. And I mean, they didn't know.
yeah.
So, I mean, with all of that, I just was like, you know what? Like, this is not okay. So I started a deep dive kind of into that whole pelvic health world, started reading a lot of research, and then ended up self-referring to a
Oh,
pelvic PT at that point because I was just like, I need help. I don't know what I'm doing. Someone needs to help me get through this
can
because I
you
was being,
describe a little bit like what that felt like to you? I know you said like everything feels like it's gonna fall out. Was it painful? Was it just like this is a really weird sensation? What were kind of the
yeah, it
symptoms?
was just like a really weird sensation. So just felt a lot of like pressure and heaviness. Um, just didn't feel like things were in the place they were supposed to be in anymore,
Hmm.
basically.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was just really frustrating because I was being told like I would never lift weights again. And coming from somebody who really enjoyed doing like CrossFit and things like that, that like crushed me as like with my identity as like an athletic individual.
Hmm.
So after, going through all the rehab with this pelvic floor therapist, luckily she was awesome. And she really did a good job of kind of combining that ortho and pelvic lens, which I don't think all therapists do. So I think that was really, really great. And with that, I kind of realized because I started kind of treating my friends like they'd say they have a problem, and I'd be like, oh, what if you try this, do this, do this? And they're like, okay, Amanda, like but you're not my therapist. And like it just kept happening to the point where I was like, you know what? I think I actually really like this a lot. So I transitioned to pelvic.
That's amazing. And so how far into your PT career did you really go down the pelvic health niche?
About like 5 years into it.
Okay. And then take us to like right before you opened Uplift. What did your career look like at that time? Where were you working? What kind of setting? Things like that.
Yeah, so it was kind of right after COVID was ending. So during COVID, I actually worked in some non-clinical research roles for the military, where I was like, writing grants, writing, different research articles, doing all sorts of things in that realm. And I felt like I was missing a part of my identity as a physical therapist because I wasn't doing a lot of clinical care.
Mm,
So I started to look into options for me to do more clinical care now that COVID was like winding down. People were hiring physical therapists again. My kids were a little bit older. So I was like, all right. And by older, I mean like they were like two. But we kind of like I looked into some different options and just really didn't love the options that were out there
mhm,
because like when I was in the military, we could just treat soldiers the way they needed to be treated, right? We didn't have to ask permission from the insurance company to get pre-approval or anything like that. We just treated them with the care they needed. So, getting out of the military, transitioning and all of that, and talking to other insurance-based PTs in the area, I just kind of realized that like insurance companies controlled everything in those clinics.
mhm,
And it was no longer about what the patient needed or what they wanted. It was only about, okay, what did the insurance company decide was okay with their arbitrary like metrics and numbers and stuff. So I didn't really feel comfortable lowering my standard, if you
mhm.
will, for patient care. I really wanted to continue to provide kind of like high quality individualized care that I was able to do in the military. And I didn't think I'd be able to do it in like a big box insurance practice. So
Yeah. I mean, I think especially with that kind of a niche, like especially with pelvic health, like there's a lot of nuance to that, right? And I think it's very difficult to do that in an insurance-based setting for a number of reasons. And that's like a whole other topic. But what I love that I'm hearing, especially from a lot of younger therapists, is I didn't like the options provided to me. I decided to go out and create my own, which I think is such a great thing coming from someone who graduated, I joke all the time, in the 1900s. Like, I don't think I just don't think my generation probably had the courage to do that so much. Um, there also was a lot less, well, there were I don't think I knew any private pay clinics at the time. There probably was some, but it definitely wasn't. So the mindsets around there is like, who's going to pay cash when you can use
yeah.
insurance? So I'm loving when I hear younger therapists be like, I didn't love the options provided to me. So I went out and created my own. So tell me, let's take us to like right before Uplift is birthed into this world, no pun intended. Like what was that impetus like? What was there a moment that you're like, okay, I'm gonna do this and I'm starting to look for spaces? What was that kind of period like for you?
I mean, honestly, I was kind of just like tired of people telling me what to do.
Hmm.
And I just was like, you know what? It's time for me just to like do my own thing and be my own boss and do things the way I want to. Um, my husband's actually active duty in the Army still as a physical therapist. And we found out on like a random Tuesday that he was accepted into a manual therapy fellowship, which is a very rigorous program through the military. And with that, we knew we were going to have stability for the next 3 years. We knew we weren't going to move. We knew that we'd be able to stay put at least the next 3 years. And with that, I was like, okay, I mean, I could do this. Like, I could start something. It doesn't have to be big. I just can see some patients here and there. And it'll be fun. And I could just, treat some patients. So we started looking for like a small space, tried to keep it under like $1,000 for rent, so that, I only needed to see like 5 to 10 patients a month to even just to make rent. 'Cause that's all I really was like intending to do in the beginning. So that was kind of, I mean, where we started. It was all just going to be a side hustle while I worked full time, doing research.
Wow. And so when did that change?
So I opened in September of 22, and then in February of 23, so I don't know, like 5 months later, 4 months later, um, I just got busy. Like
Mhm.
I had done so much community marketing. I was out just building relationships constantly. And then I got to the point where I was seeing like 20, 25 patients on my schedule a week, and I didn't feel like I could maintain that. So
Wow,
I hired my first physical therapist and hired her full time and went from there.
that's crazy. So tell us a little bit about what Uplift looks like today in terms of team, like your team, what does that consist of? Your role
Yeah.
in the team, and kind of let's talk a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about like how you got to that, because it's literally, you literally just celebrated your 2-year anniversary, which is insane that how fast your team has grown. So what does Uplift look like today?
Yeah, so we're still a single clinic. Um, I serve kind of as like the CEO, the visionary, the COO, the marketing person, the financial person, all the hats. We have two front desk people, and then we have 5 physical therapists, and we operate out of a 1,700 like square foot facility.
Amazing. I love your clinic, the way you set it up there. I love the barn doors. I think it's like a great setup. So basically you sit in almost all the leadership roles, right? So when we talk about business structure, especially when we talk about it in like the inner circle, we talk about, I think we just didn't we just went over like an org chart with you. Was that you? Okay.
Yeah.
Um, the leadership roles in a business are CEO. Then under the CEO that reports to CEO, you have a sales and marketing head, an operations head, and a finance head. And very often when we start business, we sit in all of those, plus the day-to-day roles, which include clinician, customer service, all of that stuff. So you, though, have kind of moved yourself out of clinical care at this point, and now you've taken one step up where now you're no longer the technician and you're now sitting in all the leadership roles. So what was that journey like for you? Do you like being in this more of a leadership role versus a clinician role? And how long did it take you to make that transition?
Yeah, so I love being in this leadership role. I think that business optimization and people management and things like that are things that I really enjoy doing. Um, I love patient care as well, but I think I like running a business more,
Hmm.
if I'm being honest. So I haven't been in, I think, so I hired my first therapist in March of 23. And then probably by July of 23, I was pulled out of patient care. So
Wow,
I have
fast.
maybe
Okay.
one, right now I probably have like, I think I have 1 or 2 patients that I see like once a month that are just lifers that
Mhm.
dedicated and don't want to see anyone else. So I
Yeah.
still see them and it's great. But for the most part, like I am completely pulled out of clinical care. And now I just do more clinical mentorship and teaching and helping my staff get better at all their clinical skills, their sales skills, their communication, and all that kind of stuff. Which has been, I mean, great. I really enjoy that part of the business.
Yeah. I and I think a lot of PTs specifically, at least for me, I love that part of the business too, because I think of it, I think what makes me a good physical therapist is that I'm super analytical. And so like I see things as a puzzle. And so like which piece fits here. And I'm always trying to, you know, make the puzzle work. So as a business owner, I think that's fascinating too. And I think you and I are very similar in that regard. You love numbers, you can at least create and manipulate a spreadsheet, whereas that's a little above my skill set. But what are some of the challenges you've actually seen? Because they don't teach us any of this in school. Like they don't teach leadership in school. They don't teach business in school. And I don't know a training program that does. I don't care if you're an OT, a PT, a personal trainer, a Pilates instructor, a yoga, like this is part of what's lacking, I think, in our industry. So what has that looked like for you really in the last year and a half, stepping into now leading a team versus going in and treating a patient?
I would say one of the biggest challenges is the managing people part,
Mhm.
right? Because you have to first care about your people. You need to build a relationship with each one of your staff and understand them, which understand like building a relationship with somebody and or talking to somebody is one thing, but understanding them is a completely different ballgame. So you need to understand that like every employee has their own strengths, weaknesses, beliefs, biases
Mhm.
that can influence the way that they work, the way they interact, all of those things. So I think I've done a lot of work internally, like reading books, listening to podcasts, doing all those things, talking with you, Christa, to kind of like establish this habit of listening to my staff, and kind of motivationally interviewing them. So having conversations so I can better understand them, understand what makes them tick, all the things. But a lot of the time, those are challenging conversations.
Mhm.
But I think if we didn't have those conversations and I didn't get to the point where I could do those, Uplift would not be where it is because we've had massive breakthroughs as a result of, these relationships. Because I mean, I think you know this, but telling people what to do doesn't work like at all.
Mhm.
It just
Mhm.
doesn't. So, there kind of needs to be this almost like a shared decision making between like you and your staff. Obviously, like what you say is maybe final, but I think if you can get the input from people, I think it can really help you get to a good place and move forward. But that's been the most challenging part is building relationships with people.
It really is hard.
Mhm.
And it's what's interesting too is I think a lot of it, and I would imagine you have really great rapport with your patients, right? I think that's why most of us are like, oh, I could go into my own business. Like I have great rapport with patients. People would come to me. And it's just a different beast when we're talking about people we manage and lead. Okay. No matter if there's a lot of emotional awareness that has to come with that, self-awareness. Um, Sometimes looking to ourselves at
Mhm.
cause, putting ourselves at cause, like we may have created this, whether intentionally or not intentionally, right?
Mhm.
And then making the difficult decisions that if this person, they might be the right person, but they might not be in the right seat in the business. And if there's not another seat to put them in, then sometimes we have to make those difficult decisions. And you've gone through a tremendous amount of change in your business in the last year. And I know that that can be really emotionally draining. Can you talk a little bit about, if you're willing to share, just some of the thoughts that as an owner, you sometimes have to maybe you have to manage your own thoughts and expectations, and sometimes what's the challenging about that? Like an example would be, like I talk about this all the time, and it's going to happen again this weekend. The time is going to change, right? We're going back in time. And I've talked about this a lot. And it's like, it's one of those little things that to me, if I go into the studio a week later and it's been a week and none of the clocks in the studio have been changed to the right time, it's like one of those things that I'm like, what the hell? And I've had to learn, like, they're not trying to say F you to me. Nobody notices, right? So, like, what are some things, again, if you're willing to share that as a business owner, I just think other business owners would relate. And I want people to realize they're not alone.
Trying to think through. I mean, I've had a similar clock situation, but it had to do with batteries. It's just like change the batteries. It's
Yeah.
fine. Um, I would say some of like the hardest things for me is trying to make sure like so if one of my staff members like does something and maybe it's they're just like coming into work like barely on time
Mhm.
or maybe they're like not doing a great like closeout with their patient or they're not following up with them on time or something like they're just like not going above and beyond. um my initial like thought is like is towards emotion, right? It's
Mhm.
towards being like, why aren't you doing this? Like, this is so frustrating. This is what's happening in my head. I'm just like, are
Right.
you just like lazy? Like, you can't follow any of the rules. Like, just do what you're supposed to do. Be an adult, manage yourself
Yeah.
better. That's what my brain says. But then I have to be like, okay, Amanda, like, why is this so triggering for you? Like,
Mhm.
why does this upset you so much? and like think through, do I have any, I think this is something we've worked on is like, do I have any evidence to support, like any actual facts or evidence to support the fact that this person is just lazy? Or to support that this person is blatantly choosing to not follow the rules just to stick it to me. And most of the time, the answer is no.
Mhm.
A lot of the time, it actually just comes back to like, okay, well, were the expectations clear,
Mhm.
right? Do I have it written down? Do I have it documented? And does the staff know about them? Right? Like I can have all sorts of expectations in my head or on paper or in some handbook that they've never looked at. But unless we're talking about it and we're tracking it and we're reinforcing it, how can I expect them to do it? Right? They're
Yeah.
not clones of me, right? They can't be clones of me. Otherwise, they'd open their own business in 2 minutes.
Right.
So I don't know. I would say that's probably the biggest thing that I struggle with is feeling those emotions and then being like, okay, like, are these real?
Yeah.
Should they be real? Are they warranted or not?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've come a tremendous way in that regard for sure. And I really believe that that is like the catapult to getting us as business owners to the other side. Now, I'm not going to say that the shit doesn't hit the fan again and those emotions completely go away because I mean, I just had an incident 2 weeks ago where something was really triggering to me and I have an amazing staff and an amazing team and somebody said something to me that I thought was really, really hurtful. And the old me would have been like, get the fuck out then.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
instead I was like, I think both of our emotions are very raw. I think we should revisit this conversation when we're a little bit clearer headed, right?
Yeah.
And so like you said, it's okay to have those thoughts, but then let's bring it back and say, um, is this true?
Yeah.
Do we know it to be true? And if it's not, maybe we just ask like, hey, here's what I'm thinking. I don't know why I have this feeling that this is what's happening. Is this, and all sorts of answers come from that, right? We hear people say, this is going on in my personal life. I just didn't want to bring it into the office. They think they're not bringing it into the office, but it kind of is, right?
Yeah.
And we as owners too, like,
Mhm.
right now we were talking about how your son had a little procedure. Like if you were really stressed about that and you were bringing things into the office, like you might think you were keeping it at home, but your
Right.
staff is like, what's wrong with Amanda? Like she seems very tight
Mhm.
about it, right? And then the other thing is, I think you do a really, really amazing job at looking at things objectively because feelings are not facts, right?
Yeah.
We have to let me look at the numbers. Let me look at, are we really not hitting our enough evaluations, right? No, we have plenty of evaluations. Are we not closing it out, right? And then deciding, you have kids, I have kids and we our parents sometimes we have to pick our battles, right?
Mhm.
And as business owners we have to pick our battles sometimes too, right? So well, let's talk a little bit about what surprised you, probably, like if you can think of one or two things that really surprised you, more like as you started hiring people in terms of business, like that you maybe were like, oh shit, I didn't really realize this was going to be part of like the business plan. Are there some things that really surprised you?
Yeah, I would say one of the things that surprised me was I didn't realize how how much you almost sometimes feel like you're just waiting for the another shoe to drop,
Mhm.
kind of. Even if it's just something as little as like, okay, when I wake up in the morning and I look at my phone, am I going to have a text there that says, I'm running late, my kid is sick, I can't come in because I'm throwing up, or something from a staff member. And then I'm going to have
Or
to
like the
do,
fire department is knocking at your door trying to get into your
yes,
building and you're like, what?
right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's just like just not knowing, like, is today going to be the day? And maybe that's some of my anxiety, talking, but like, is today going to be the day that, somebody quits?
Mhm.
Or is today going to be the day that, half my staff are out sick and I'm going to be at the front desk this week? Like, I think those are the things that it's probably the most surprising for me was that you're never really off, right?
Yeah.
Like, people think, okay, I'm going to start this business so I can like get my time back. I can have this work-life balance. I can do all these things. But I almost feel like you have to like earn that. Like it doesn't come
Mhm.
immediately. I think I'm on my way towards that. Like I've been able to be home and be with my son this whole week while he's been recovering from his like tonsillectomy. And it's been fine. The clinic's making money. The clinic is fine. Everyone's good. So I think that's been the most surprising thing is that you aren't really off ever.
Yeah.
No.
And you and I can chat about this because we're both therapists, but when you talk about a nervous system regulation point, right? So people talk all the time just about like, oh, I mean, that's a big buzz thing. Now your cortisol levels are like through the roof and da 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 da. So, however, as a business owner, right? Exactly like you're talking about. Like you're never really off. People are calling you or texting you at midnight being like, I haven't stopped throwing up since 7 a.m., 7 p.m. I think I'm not going to make it tomorrow. And now at midnight, you got to figure out what to do with all these patients. You have, so like if you're never, we know this from a physiological perspective, like if our nervous system is always waiting for the next shoe to drop,
Mhm.
then we are always this anxious and it like most this is a generalization, but most of us are anxious people to begin with, which usually makes us really good at what we do. We're perfectionists. That's why we went to PT school. So it just builds on top of each other, right? And so that feeling, you can't just tell somebody that's like that to relax because their nervous system is never shut off, right? So I like to tell people if you want freedom in your business, like if you want your freedom in your life, you have to create the structure in your business, which
Agreed.
is a lot of the stuff that people they don't teach us,
Yeah.
right? So, and it's the stuff none of us really like to do. It's the same way our patients don't like to do pelvic tilts. Why? Because they're boring and repetitive and stupid, but they're
They
important for
work.
the, but they work and they're important for the foundation. Like if you want to be able to stand up on your foundation, you have to know how to do a pelvic tilt. Anyways, so one of the things that I think, and this is truly what I think a lot of business coaching programs, at least that I've been privy to, get wrong a little bit. They talk a lot about always like market. How do you get people in the door? How do you get people in the door? Well, that's great. But if you don't have the systems for which to hold your own staff accountable, all that marketing will break your business because now you're
Yeah.
crazy, right? And so it's like building a house. If you put the second floor on before the first floor foundation is solid, it's going to crumble. Okay. And it's tough because we also are people that want results yesterday. And so this stuff takes time. But I think you're doing, I mean, the fact that you're out of clinical care already, less than 2 years into your business is phenomenal. The fact that you have systems in place now, and now we're at the point where it's going to just be repetition, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't want to equate our team to children. But you have to say things over and over and over again because they might be listening, but they're not hearing, or they might have other stuff going on. And so you're doing a great job. But that's the hard part. And that's the part that we did sign up for when we became business owners. I think you're doing a great job at that. Um, what would you say you're most proud of in terms of your business at Uplift?
I would say I am most proud of, honestly, this past year. So, over the past year, I think everything has gone wrong that can go wrong. Maybe not. I could probably get creative and think of other things that could have gone wrong. But earlier this year, I had, my main full-time physical therapist ended up leaving. Had a baby, really happy for her. My, person who I would consider like my clinic manager quit unexpectedly for personal reasons. I ended up hiring 5 different admins over the course of 3 months, ended up firing 3 of them, had 3 new providers come on that all needed training. And that was all within like 3 months. And at the same time, I also had my appendix removed unexpectedly
Amazing.
right when that was all happening. And I think with all of that happening, I'm really, really proud that we have stayed afloat and that like our dips have been pretty minimal and we've
Mhm.
rebounded so well. Um, it was the time where I feel like the clinic culture really helped hold us up because everybody was like, we're in this together. Yes, there's been a lot of changes, expected and unexpected changes. But we've been able to rebound. Like all of that happened in like March, April, May timeframe this year. So my Q2 was pretty bad, but Q3, Q4 have been our highest yet. So we've
Amazing.
definitely kind of come back from that. But I would say that's probably the thing I'm the most proud of. It's just all of the staffing changes that have
It's
happened
hard.
in my business. And I mean, not necessarily intentionally, but I think it was what needed to happen.
Yeah, it's like a game of whack-a-mole, like you said. Like as soon as you whack one thing down, something else comes up. So, and what do you think prepared you to handle all of that? Like just 2 years into business.
I don't think there's anything that can prepare you for this. I really think that it came back to having a support system, right?
Mhm.
Like I was able to talk to my husband, cry to my husband. I was able to talk to my like mentorship groups. I was able to talk to you as my business coach and just go through, okay, like so this just happened. Now how do I what do I even do next? I think some of the biggest advice you gave me at one point was just like, yes, something crazy just happened, but just take a break, take a pause, take a breath, give it 48 hours, take the weekend, and don't come up with a solution. And just like sit in this for a little bit so that you don't, come up with a solution that's just like a knee-jerk reaction, but isn't necessarily the best reaction or the best solution. So I think that was really helpful. I think just having the support of other people who have been there, done that was probably the best thing because I don't think you can prepare for all that stuff that happened within like 3 months, like
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah. I do believe that's why the power of community is really important, like being able to reach out to whether it be colleagues or other mentors or people that you know in the community or our spouses, our partners, our family. Some people have other support systems. I just think it's important to have a group that you can reach out to. I'm the same and I still talk to my mastermind group and we all share the same stories and regardless of whether we're doing, 6 figures in revenue, 7 or 8 figures in revenue, like they're the same problems, just different scales, right? And I think one of the things I remember that conversation where I was like, just
Yeah.
sit in it this weekend. Like sit, let's talk on Monday. And I think one of the reasons it's hard for a lot of people like us is, you know, growing up, most of us were responsible for taking care of a lot of things and being the fixer. And so it's really hard for us to sit in something. We're so used to people needing us to make a decision right away. And
Yeah.
sometimes the best thing we can do is not make that decision right away, right? Not reply to that email right away, not decide who we're going to replace that person with today. What does the business like just sit in it? And it's really uncomfortable to sit in that discomfort.
Yes.
It
Yes.
really is. Yeah.
I think I felt so much pressure and a lot of it was internal pressure.
Yeah.
I felt so much pressure to do what I thought needed to be done to support and look like I knew what I was doing for my staff. Right. Like I was like, okay, my staff are going to want to know what's going to happen next. So I need to figure out what's going to happen next so that I can fulfill on their expectations of me.
Right.
Guess what? Those aren't their
They're
expectations.
not.
They're my expectations
Yeah.
of myself.
Yeah.
So,
And I bet your team, would say, and I think you shared one of those messages with the group one day when you're like, my team, someone sent this message to me while you were on vacation or something. And I think we superimpose like our beliefs onto other people, whether that be our clients,
yeah.
our clients, our staff, our family. And sometimes your team, I guarantee your team knows that you'll be there no matter what. I guarantee that their perception of you is Amanda will get us through this, like 100%, right? And so they trust in you for that. And they trust that if you didn't make a decision on Friday, like by Monday or Tuesday, we'll decide. Or you're going to communicate with them, hey, we're going to see what's the best thing for the team, but we're just going to give it a month
Yeah.
or so. Let's just see what happens. Okay. So it's great. What kind of advice would you give maybe our listeners that are going through staffing issues? I mean, it is a huge thing in our industry all the way around. I don't care if you're talking about Pilates studios, HIIT studios, big box gyms, physical therapy clinics. Staffing is a major thing. So if you're talking to a business owner that's either just starting, trying to hire, having a difficult time, or is in like a staffing situation with their current staff, what kind of advice would you give them?
So I think the biggest piece of advice that I've gotten many, many times is hire slow and fire fast. I think it's in all the books that you
Mhm.
read and every podcast. But I will say from my own experience, the worst hires that I have made were from a place of like desperation,
Mhm.
where I was like, I need this person. Like I need a person, not necessarily this person, but I need somebody in this role. We're gonna fall apart if I don't have somebody in this role. I'll take anybody, right? That's like good enough kind of thing. And it's not that the people were bad people. They just weren't the right people for the seats that I have, right? And the
Mhm.
needs that I had. So really like my advice is like don't allow that like need to kind of cloud your gut instinct. I definitely hired people who I knew weren't a good fit and deep down I was like, well, I mean, I can make it work. Like it's not that bad. And I settled. And
Yeah.
those were the situations that were really difficult to get through because I had definitely had employees that were maybe not top performers and required a lot of energy and a lot of effort and work, which I will invest in my people. Like I'm not saying that, but it was just a different level. And I
Mhm.
was finding that in the end, they were kind of pulling down my other staff. So
Mm.
when you have like the wrong person in the clinic, especially if they're a bad culture fit, right?
Yeah.
I definitely had at least one of those. Like when you have the wrong culture fit in the clinic, that's just like it's like a cancer. And I definitely could tell like it was affecting other people within the clinic. And I was like, this culture is something that I've worked really hard to build
Mm.
and I need to protect it. So hire slow and then get them out of there as fast as you can if they're not a good fit.
Yeah. I mean, they say all the time, like, if you don't set the culture, it will be set for you. And yeah. So, what are some, I mean, I still have things that I learn as I interview and hire people as well. Like, what are some red flags that maybe you look for that you're like, yeah, my gut's telling me this is not the right fit?
I mean, honestly, one of them is if the person is just really annoying to me within the
Yeah.
interview. Like if I'm in the interview and I'm just like, God, like I do not want to talk to you anymore. Like if
Yeah.
I'm feeling
You know
like
what?
that,
I
I
think
don't,
that's super, yeah, I think that's super important because I'm glad you brought that up because it's not like a red flag in terms of, oh, they were late to the interview or they did this or they don't know pelvic health. Like the fact that you're like, I don't know this person's personality or something annoys me, like that's not going to change for you. And this is your business. So if somebody that works for you inherently annoys you, it's not going to work. And so
yeah,
some people might not want to say that because they're like, that, what does that make me sound like? But I think that's important to recognize like that is going to irritate you. Right. And so that's a good point.
yes.
That's a very good point.
And on the flip side of that, right, is like, so do they annoy you, right? And you just can't this or is the conversation like pulling teeth,
Yeah.
right? Where you're just like, can you just give me something? Because
Hmm.
then how are they going to interact with clients? Like
Hmm.
if they can't feel comfortable enough to talk to you, they're not going to talk to clients in a great way that is going to be like opening and make people feel really, I don't know, like warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
And then I'd say the other part, like, I mean, if the conversation like flows really well, like, I mean, I usually use the like, do I want to go get a beer with you test?
Hmm.
Where I'm like, okay, would I want to like invite this person out to like go get a beer? Like, right, not all my staff need to be my best friend. Like, that is not the intent. But is this somebody that would fit in with our culture, basically?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'd say like those are probably the bigger things that I look out for. I think, I mean, and then also just like listen to what people say and believe them, right? Don't think that like if somebody's like, yeah, like I don't know, I don't think that weekends, but I don't think weekends would work for me, but I mean, I could make it work for here. they're
And
not
you're
going
like,
to want to do weekends for
"Mm,
you. It's always going
mm,
to be pulling teeth. Like it's not going to change just because they said like, yeah, well, I can try. Like
yeah,
they're not going to want to do that. Or if they're like, yeah, I don't really like role playing, but that's a big part of your like training process, then you're going to be pulling teeth to try and get them to role play and just believe them. Like,
yeah."
don't think that you can change everybody because you can't.
So smart. So smart. And the more you do it, just like anything else, right? The better you're going to get at it and the more you can start seeing these little like the story, the read the story between the lines kind of thing. So
Yes.
so if people want to follow you, where can they? And by the way, I think your social media has like is so freaking hilarious now. Like I think you and your team have done a really, really great job of like stepping up your social media. I think it's hilarious. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so we're at Uplift PTP because our whole name is Physical Therapy and Performance. So
Love it.
Uplift PTP on Instagram.
Awesome. I will definitely link that up in the show notes. And where do you see Uplift in the next like in 2025? Any big changes?
Um, I mean, big picture, I want Uplift to kind of be the go-to pelvic health clinic in San Antonio so that when people like say pelvic health, they're like Uplift, right? That's their first like kind of thought. So, I mean, I think it'd be really great to get some stability within my current clinic. I think next year is going to be a really big year of growth for us. Now that our
Mhm.
like staffing is really stable and things, fingers crossed, stay that way. I would love to open some satellite clinics across the city because I mean, we're in a big city and some people drive, 35, 40, 50
Oh,
minutes
wow.
to come and see us.
Yeah.
So if there was I'd love to put a couple of like satellite clinics throughout the city so that pelvic health, high quality pelvic health care is like just around the corner. But really, I mean, in order for me to do that, I need to take off some of my hats, right?
Mhm.
Like I need to hire and have, the right people in the right seats so that I can delegate some of this stuff. Because otherwise, like, I mean, I'm only one person and
Mhm.
I'm gonna hold myself back if I just hold on to everything myself. So
Yeah.
I definitely want to, really invest in my people over this next year, so that, we can reach those goals.
Yeah, I think you do a great job of that. And I see all of that in your future. You'll definitely be able to accomplish. You do the work, which is the most important part. So that's been great. So it's been great to watch you grow too. Thank you so much for joining us. We will link all of this stuff up in the show notes so you can go follow Amanda and Uplift on Instagram and check out her website. She has a really nice website too, as well, that shows some really good SEO headlines and all that stuff if you want to see what a good website looks like. And until next time, my friends, bye for now.
Thank you.